This is Just Tool Basics, and today we're talking about hose cutters. Hello everyone, welcome to Just Tool Basics. Today's topic is hose cutters, which is a pretty simple tool. And I know that until I had one for my own use, I kind of thought they were excessive. It seems like the sort of thing you can fix with a box cutter, but they do have their purpose, and they certainly make a nicer cut than a box cutter does. I have two different kinds here. This one is actually designed for cutting flexible conduit. Klein is a electrician tool company, and it's flatter, opens nice and wide, but it's designed for cutting through that flexible conduit. You can use it for a hose cutter. I've used it for a hose cutter. It works fine. It has a much thicker blade since it is designed for a thicker thing than radiator hoses or whatever, fuel hoses, things like that. But this is a dedicated automotive hose cutter, and it has this exciting, very spiky thing that, makes you want to keep your thumbs away from it, like it could be used as a weapon. Now, like I said, the general objection to having these sorts of specialized tools is that, you can just use a razor knife. Now, as you may know, I love this knife. I have several of these knives. I think these are the best of the razor knives or box cutters, whatever you like to call them. Now, the reason that I don't think they're appropriate most of the time for cutting a radiator hose. Now, this one, of course, you wouldn't be trimming it, but I had to replace this at one time. It's a quick disconnect, so you typically wouldn't replace just the hose part, but we're just sacrificing it for cutting. The hose material is the same for a traditional non-quick disconnect end, where you would just be connecting it to the nipple of the part of the engine it's connecting to. Now, you can, just cut through it with a knife, and I can show that we can. And, it's mostly fine. But you do have to be careful so it doesn't slip and cut yourself. Maybe I could have taken my time, but it makes an okay cut. I'm not saying that it's a disaster or something like that. But what if it's in a delicate spot? I had the advantage here where I can turn the hose to make that cut. If you're trying to cut it off of a part of the engine where it's stuck onto it, like it's rotted to it, and you're having trouble just getting it disconnected, and it's cracked and crazed enough that there's no sense in preserving the hose itself, you might as well just cut it off. Hacking at it might be your only option. However, taking a hose cutter means that it's for sure going to be a nice flat cut. It's going to be at a nice right angle, perpendicular to the hose. It just makes beautiful cuts. And it's very efficient. And you don't have the chance of slipping and cutting into something important like electrical parts or just nicking up your engine. This one is obviously much larger, but it works just fine. There's no major advantage to that spiky end in this case because of this little guy. But where that comes into play, let's move this junk out of the way, is when you talk about these bigger hoses. So maybe this little guy will work on this size of hose. Yeah, it probably will work. But you do have to double cut it. And that works fine. This is where I would definitely want a tool like this instead of hacking at it with a razor knife, because it's going to be just much harder to get a nice smooth cut all the way around, making sure that it's nice and parallel. Having this surface here or this surface here means that it's backed up against it, and it is holding it in place so that you can do a smooth cut. You can also, even if this was a larger hose, like this side is a little bit larger, I'm sure you can just fight with it to, still make a nice cut. And it's just very controlled. Makes that you can, make a nice smooth cut. So yeah, I recommend these highly. This pointed one gets through even thicker hoses, definitely takes care of that nylon reinforcement. That's what these little hairs are around in the hose, is nylon reinforcement, where using a razor knife can leave some of those more as tails that you then have to clean off, as you're kind of hacking through it. Whereas this makes a smooth enough cut that you shouldn't have any of that hairy stuff. Not that it makes a huge difference, but having hairy crud sticking out of your freshly cut hoses is sad. And of course, by the way, there's no, lower limit to these things. This little fuel hose, obviously we can cut that as well. It works just fine. It's only when you get into the larger sizes is where you may run out of capacity in a given hose cutter. So I think that's about it on hose cutters. If you like this kind of content, don't forget to subscribe. Until next time, this is Just Tool Basics.